Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Brandon. Welcome to Audio Addiction, where you can find latest album reviews, you can find our band interviews, and you can find live coverage of the concerts that we get. We're going to check out Hail the Sun today, so definitely check back with the channel. We'll have hopefully footage of all the bands. I hope to get all of them, even locals if I can. But I'll be doing that, as well as I'll be getting two interviews, one with Limbs and the other with Hail the Sun, so definitely check back with the channel to check those out as well. I will also be posting an update video tomorrow, hopefully Thursday, while you guys are watching this. So definitely be on the lookout for that. So if you enjoy what we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also make sure to hit that like button as well. It really does go a long way, and thank you guys for your support. It really does mean a lot. Just anybody who comments, likes the video, whatever, it really does help me get my name out there, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, tonight we're going to be talking about Volume's new record, Different Animals. So originally I didn't plan on doing this record. I got it a little bit early, but I found out about it a little bit early. But I wasn't really feeling the singles just on this record, and I've pretty much broken my rule of not basing an album off the singles, and I have to say that the singles, I'll kind of get into it a little bit later, but I definitely feel like the singles were probably more of the weaker tracks off this record, without a doubt. So I was definitely surprised by it, and I'm just going to give you my overall thoughts on each of the tracks, and some pros and cons, and then I'm going to get through to a rating for this record. So the first track is called Waves Control. This was one of the singles that they released. I think it's the most recent one they released. It's on Fearless's stream, pretty much. But this one comes out the gate swinging. Definitely has that sort of groovy bounciness that you would typically find with a Volume sort of track. Definitely hearing influences of No Sleep and Via, in my opinion. It definitely has that kind of mix between the two. Definitely liking Mike's cleans. I feel like in the singles that they had released, there wasn't a lot to go off of in terms of vocals, just from his end. I know he also does screams as well, but just clean wise, I didn't really hear too much, so it was kind of good to hear him do a little bit more cleans on this track in particular, and a lot of the other tracks off the record, but this one in particular, I definitely feel like it's a solid opener track. It doesn't really have anything too special to it, in my opinion. I think it's a solid track, but it doesn't have, I don't really think it's one of the weaker tracks, but I definitely don't feel like it's in the top tier tracks that I liked off this record. So we're gonna move into track number 2, which is Finite. This one's definitely one of my favorites. Definitely liking the solo vocals from Mike at the beginning, kind of their little soft, a little bit of melodic feel to it, and then it really kind of kicks in after that. Another really kind of groovy, sort of genty sort of track that, again, you would expect from Volumes. Loving this sort of additional layers that they're adding, like bongos I could hear, just some like synth and sort of electronic parts. I feel like that kind of adds a little bit more depth to the track, and I feel like it kind of adds to the catchiness of it as well. Speaking about catchiness, I definitely feel like this has just an overall catchiness to it, and I definitely feel like it's a little bit of a different sound for them, in my opinion. I feel like they strayed a little bit, which is great because I do like hearing different kind of things. This one is probably more of a Mike centered track. There is some vocals from I know his name's Young Yogi, but I forget his real name. But there's some mix of screams in there, but not really. I would say it's more like 80-20, 80 cleans, 20% screams. But I definitely like the balance between melody and heaviness. I feel like this one, despite having not too many screams, I feel like it's definitely on the radar of more of a heavier track. And again, I feel like this features more of Mike's vocals, which I do appreciate, considering, again, like the singles really kind of don't hint too much in terms of his vocals. I did like what he does on Her Mind, but I definitely feel like since he's a new vocalist, I feel like they should have more tracks with his vocals on it, obviously. So we'll move it into track number 3, which is Feels Good. This is the first single that they released, and since the first time you heard it, or maybe you've heard the newer version, but this one definitely had a version change. They added a lot more like oomph to the track. I definitely feel like if it was like the older one, I feel like to me it wouldn't have had that sort of punch to it. It doesn't have that sort of like I don't know, it doesn't have that real like tightness to it. This one definitely has a more tighter feel to it, and I definitely like this one in comparison to the first version. Obviously, I just feel like it has a bit more depth to it. It's a bit more solid. Just structurally it sounds a lot better. I feel like they kind of just honed in everything. I felt like maybe the first single that they released was maybe like I wouldn't say it's kind of like a demo, but it definitely felt like kind of like a demo. It felt a little bit rough, which was fine. But I definitely feel like they cleaned it up a lot. They definitely added some more electronic layers. They added stuff that added a little bit more pop, a little bit more tightness to it. Definitely that breakdown at 2 minutes and 30 just goes in just a little bit harder because again, I feel like they really kind of nailed it on that. And I would definitely say this is one of my favorite singles that they had off that they've released so far. I definitely feel like it's the most solid track on the record in terms of singles. So we're gonna move into track number 4, which is Disaster Vehicle. This track definitely has this great aggressiveness to it. Again, reminding me of older tracks from their roots, like Via. It definitely has that sort of vibe to it. I would say that this one is one of the more heavier tracks off the record, without a doubt. I definitely feel like they incorporated electronics very well throughout this track. And I definitely feel like this one's just a solid, sort of heavy, sort of aggressive track. That kind of, I wouldn't say it's missing, but definitely is a nice addition to this record so far. So we're going to move into track number 5, which is Pieces. I'm liking this sort of darker verses and lighter choruses. The darker verses have that kind of like, just, I don't know, it has this sort of like heaviness, darkness to it. It feels a little bit more just, I don't know, a little bit more dissonant in terms of just guitar writing style. It just feels a little bit darker, and the choruses feel a little bit more lighter in terms of more happier sort of chords. I'm definitely like the riffing in this track. I think it's definitely a bit of a slower track, but I think it is a solid track nonetheless. I like that the chorus kind of bleeds into the verses. I think that makes it really a solid chorus in my opinion. I definitely like the heaviness of the bridge. It has those sort of genty vibes to it and kind of ends out very well as well. Kind of just ends on that sort of genty sort of, you know, sort of stuff you expect from Volumes, as I said earlier. Solid vocals on both ends, both from screams and cleans, from Gus, that's his name, and Mike on the cleans. I feel like they balance each other out very well, and I definitely feel like Mike kind of adds in a little bit of his screams, which is a great kind of like back and forth. I know that Volumes does that a lot, and I've been following Volumes for a bit, but I definitely appreciate that immensely. So we're gonna move into track number 6, which is the interlude. Definitely liking this piece a lot. I didn't think that I typically like interludes, but I definitely feel like this one's in some of my favorites. It has this great sort of melody to it, and I feel like it kind of adds this overall feeling to the next track as well. So I definitely feel like it bleeds very well into the next track, which I'll be talking about now, track number 7, which is Hope. This one's definitely one of my favorites. I feel like they switched it up a lot on this track, much like Finite. I feel like this one and Finite are kind of the more out of bounds sort of tracks. There's another one coming up that is definitely in that sort of category as well, but definitely in my favorites that I heard. I'm really liking the rap lines and the verses. I feel like it kind of adds another layer. I think Gus kind of just does a great job with that. I know he has a rap project called Young Yogi. That's what I was thinking of, but it definitely fits well with this track. I think it has some great melody, it has some great flow to it. Really liking the incorporation of piano and more electronics as well. I think it's executed the best in this track in terms of electronic parts. Another great chorus. Definitely one of my favorite vocal performances from Mike off this record so far. It has some really great soft moments, but also some really nice heavy moments as well. And then song structure wise, I definitely think it's the best so far off the record, in my opinion. It just feels, I mean, again, it is a different track, but to me, it fits so well with what they are going for. The structure just fits very nice. There are some screams, there's some great cleans from Mike, there's some great raps from Gus, and just the overall flow, the melody, it just fits very well together, in my opinion. So we're gonna move into track number 8, which is Tides Change. This one is kind of another interlude. I feel like it's not needed. It's a cool piece, nonetheless. Music wise, I think it's really solid. But I just feel like it wasn't needed. It's just they had the interlude, and then they had Hope, and then they had another interlude. It just feels like too much of that. I don't know, in my opinion. Some people might disagree, but to me, it just felt like and just another piece that just wasn't needed on the record, in my opinion. So we're gonna move into track number 9, which is On Her Mind, featuring Poya. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that right. This was the second single that they released. Really liking how the guitar kind of flows with the rap lines as well as the vocals in the verses. I think it's really solid. I like that sort of syncopated sort of way they went about it in this track. I definitely feel like Poya was a good guest vocal. He fits very well with this track. As well as he offers a pretty long guest feature. He does like one verse at the beginning, and then he does another verse towards the end of the record, end of this track. I mean, so I really thought he was solid. I don't know why he's getting a lot of hate. I'm not too big of a rap fan. I actually didn't know about him prior to this. I think he was a solid feature, just rap wise. I'm not partial, but I definitely feel like he fit very well in this track. I definitely feel like the chorus doesn't fit in this track in particular. That was one of the gripes that I made when I first listened to it and people were asking me about it, my thoughts on it. I definitely feel like it was just kind of thrown in. I still feel like it's kind of thrown in. It just feels like the rhythm's kind of off on the chorus the verses into the chorus. I just feel like it doesn't flow very well, but it does have a great melody to it. It's definitely one of those choruses that got stuck in my head without a doubt. And then around the 250-minute mark, I feel like in this track, I feel like they would have went into the kind of like a breakdown or something like that. So it was a little bit disappointing in that regard, but I like how they switched it up. Now looking back onto it, I feel like it's a cool kind of switch up. While I do feel like it would have been cool if they added a breakdown, not really too mad on it. I probably won't harp too bad on it. So we're going to move into track number 10, which is Heavy Silence. I like how this one starts off a bit slow and how they're giving Mike's vocals a little bit time to breathe and a little bit air. It feels like he's got a little bit more window to play with in terms of vocals. I definitely feel like this track lacks an identity to it. It has some parts where it has some more melodic flows to it, but then it's kind of interrupted where it goes into heavy parts and there's some screams. I feel like this track is probably the most inconsistent track, and just has this flow, doesn't have this flow to it. Prior to the heavy guitars, I definitely feel like it had some flow to it, but just when they added those guitars, it didn't feel like it was just appropriate to me. It just didn't feel right. I would say this one's probably the least favorite track of mine off the record. It just doesn't have that great flow to it that I expected from a lot of these other tracks. I feel like this one just kind of like the odd man out, in my opinion. So we're going to move into track number 11, which is Pulling Shade. One of my favorites as well. It gives me that sort of edge of the earth vibe from Via. Definitely has, but I definitely feel like it makes its own path as well in its own right. I think it's a really solid track nonetheless. Definitely like the grooves of this track, the grooves and the flow of this track. It just is really great. And just to speak off flow, I think this has one of the most catchiest choruses off this record, in my opinion, or damn close. But this one was another one of my favorites in terms of Mike's vocals. I just feel like he does a really solid job of just doing runs. It just fits very well together. Again, this one probably is more Mike centric as opposed to Gus centric. But I feel like there's a great balance between all of them. There are some tracks that are, again, more Gus centric. There are some tracks that are more Mike centric. So I like that. I definitely feel like that's cool. I like that there's a really great balance between heavy parts and melody as well, much like Finite. I think it's kind of in that realm of sort of the off the beat tracks, but still really solid tracks. So definitely enjoy that. I feel like the guitar solo was a bit unexpected, but still really great. I think he does a really awesome job with the guitars there. I definitely feel like this is one of the more stronger tracks off the record, and I'm just loving the sort of extra layers of like violin, electronics, a little bit of piano I could hear here and there. I feel like this one is probably production wise one of the best ones off the record. So we're going to move into track number 12, the last one, which is Left for Dead. This was another one of the singles that they released as well. Do I like it? Hell yeah, I like it. It's a heavy track. Is it technical? No, not by any means. I don't expect them to be technical. If you expect volumes to be technical, then you got something wrong with you, because I don't think they'll ever be technical. But anyway, I definitely feel like this one is a heavy hitter, without a doubt. And they even mentioned that it is a heavy track, and they wanted to put a heavy track on there. So that's what they gave you. They gave you a heavy track. Is it just, is it going to be blowing your mind like Tosin Abasi? Probably not. But again, nothing special instrumentally. A super solid sort of heavy track despite it being generic, and I definitely feel like this track would fit a little bit better if it replaced maybe Heavy Silence and it finished out with Pulling Shade. I feel like that mix would have been a little bit better as well, but nonetheless really enjoyed that one. So my pros and cons in this: pros, I like that they took some chances. I like that they switched it up. They did some really great tracks like Finite, Hope, and Pullin' Shade. I think those three are their most solid tracks off the record. Probably my favorites without a doubt. And I like the switch up, definitely. I think that since they had Mike do vocals, I definitely feel like they had to kind of switch it up a little bit. So in that regard, I feel like they executed it very well. But on the con side, I also feel like some of the tracks didn't fall where I would have liked them to fall. For example, like having Tides Change or Heavy Silence. I feel like those tracks are probably the weakest tracks off the record, in my opinion. One's obviously an interlude, but I feel like song flow wise, everything didn't flow very well. There are some really solid tracks. However, I feel like just the flow, the album just didn't feel right, especially from like Tides Changed to On Her Mind is just kind of this quiet silence, and then it gets into On Her Mind, which is solid, I mean, I guess, but it just doesn't fit, in my opinion. It doesn't work very well. There isn't that kind of lead in that was like with Interlude and Hope, which sounds great. And I feel like they executed that very well. So I think it's maybe more of a rearrangement of tracks that would make this album a little bit more solid. Maybe taking out some tracks that weren't too good in my opinion, and kind of mixing them up. Again, moving Heavy Silence for Left for Dead and just taking Heavy Silence out. I feel like that would have been just much better, and taking maybe out Tides Change would be another great option as well. But I definitely feel like it's a solid record. It took me by surprise. I am a huge Volumes fan. I do like Mike Terry as a vocalist, but I also like Michael Barr as a vocalist. So I'm kind of on that fence between the two. I do really love their old content, but I do like this new stuff as well. I like the direction that they're going in as well. I think as a band, you kind of have to grow and, move on and stuff like that. So I definitely feel like they put a solid foot forward on this record. And for those of you who are kind of skeptical, I definitely feel like this one is a really solid record on their half, despite, obviously losing Michael Barr. So my overall rating for Volumes, Different Animals, I'm going to be giving it a 8.7 out of 10. I definitely feel like it's one you should check out. Again, I was super surprised with this record. I definitely feel like it is an interesting record. If you've been following Volumes for a while, you will kind of pick up on some of the older stuff that they kind of like mixed in there. But overall, I feel like it's a solid record, and I definitely feel like you guys should check it out. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this record. Do you think that Mike's a good replacement? Do you feel like he wasn't? Let me know in the comments. Did you check it out? What do you think of the singles? Do you think that the singles were not as strong as the album? Definitely let me know. I would like to know your thoughts on it. I'd like to have a conversation about it. I feel like this will get a lot of flack, but nonetheless, I think it's a solid record from Volume. So, if you enjoy what we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure to hit that like button as well. We also have a merch store where you can pick up some sweet Audio Addiction merch. I always leave a link in the description, so definitely check that out if you are interested and you want to support. So thank you guys so much. My name is Brandon, and we hope you got your fix, and we'll be talking with you soon. Peace. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Of course, if you enjoy what we do, make sure to go check out the other series we do. We do album reviews, we do band interviews, and we do live videos, so definitely go check that out. Hit that subscribe button. It really helps our channel, helps us grow. Make sure to hit that like button as well. Go follow us on social media. That's all down below. We try to keep that as updated as possible. We also made a new website where we'll be posting photos of upcoming concerts and stuff like that, which you can go check out at audioaddictionmedia.com, and come get your fix with us, guys. Talk to you later. Deuces.